Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the October 7, 2023 attack in southern Israel by Hamas is the worst attack in the country since the era of Holocaust, saying, unlike the Holocaust that couldn't fight, Israel is currently defending itself on 7 war fronts. According to Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel is fighting with Palestinian fighters, Hamas in Gaza, who carried out the October 7, 2023 attacks in the southern Israel that killed and injured thousands of Israeli residents with hundreds taken hostage. Adding, Israel is also defending itself against Hezbollah in Lebanon, he described as the world's most dangerous terrorist organization. He added that Hezbollah was planning bigger attack in Israel before the Hamas invasion occurred. Benjamin Netanyahu named the remaining 5 groups Israel is currently on war front with, which are Iran, Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, Houthis in Yemen, terrorists in Judea and Samaria. Details of the Prime Minister's statement as reported and made available by the Office of the Prime Minister as news releases on Monday and previous days Sunday and Saturday reads below. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, today at the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem, met with a bipartisan delegation of U.S. senators led by Lindsey Graham. Prime Minister Netanyahu, I deeply appreciate the visit by Senators Graham and Blumenthal on this day of commemoration, October 7th. It was the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust, but unlike the Holocaust, we fight back. We're fighting like lions with the support of the American government and the American people, and its representatives here. I want to thank you both for your stellar support for Israel throughout the war. U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. We're honored to be with you and we appreciate your giving us this opportunity to speak with you on this really agonizingly difficult day for your country and the people of Israel and all of us in the United States who feel so deeply that it was an absolutely abhorrent, inhuman attack on the Jewish people. We're here to say we have Israel's back and Israel has the right to defend itself. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, the reason people were killed on October 7th was they were Jewish. We've seen this movie before. We don't want to see any more of those movies. Living in their own homeland. You said something that really struck me. No one should be a refugee in their own country. They are going back to the north, folks. They are going back to these kibbutzes. Whatever it takes to get your people back in their homes, you do it. To my friends in France, you've got this as backwards. You should be doubling down on helping Israel, because the people that want to destroy Israel also want to destroy the French people. I get that. He gets that. You're fighting our fight. We're going to help you with your military needs. The Twin Towers fell not because of a hurricane, because radical Islamist terrorists killed 3,000 of us on a single day. And they would kill all of us if they could. If Iran ever got a nuclear weapon, they would use it. The question would be, who would they use it against first? Me, you, Saudi Arabia. We can never let that happen. So we're going to help you. Also attending the meeting were the Prime Minister's foreign policy advisor, Dr. Ophir Falk, the Prime Minister's spokesperson, Dr. Omar Dostri, and the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs North America desk, Dor Shapira. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited an IDF base on the northern border where he held a security assessment with head of Northern Command Major General Ori Gordon and 36th Division Commander Brigadier General Moran Omar. The Prime Minister was briefed on the deployment of forces in Lebanon, the operational achievements to date and future objectives. Prime Minister Netanyahu heard from Major General Gordon about the destruction of Hezbollah's capabilities that has been achieved during the ground effort and the use of intense fire. During the briefing, the Prime Minister spoke with 36th Division Brigade commanders about the intense combat on multiple fronts which they have been taking part in for almost a year. Prime Minister Netanyahu then spoke with fighters from the division. Prime Minister Netanyahu, I am here with IDF soldiers on the northern border. Several meters from here, over the border, their fellow soldiers are dismantling the terrorist infrastructure that Hezbollah had prepared in order to attack our communities. I told them, "You are heroes worthy of commendation. You, together with your fellow soldiers, IDF fighters and the security forces in Gaza, Judea and Samaria, throughout the region, are doing amazing things. You are lions." A year ago, we took a terrible blow. In the 12 months since then, we have changed the reality across the board. The entire world is astonished by the blows you are landing on our enemies. I salute you and tell you, you are the generation of victory. Together we will fight and together we will win, with GD's help. The Prime Minister was accompanied by his Chief of Staff, Zachary Breverman, his Military Secretary, Major General Roman Goffman and his spokesperson, Dr. Omar Dostri. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, today, Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts against the enemies of civilization. We are fighting in Gaza against Hamas, the savages who murdered, raped, beheaded and burned our people on October 7th. We are fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the most heavily armed terror organization in the world, which was planning an even greater massacre than October 7th on our northern border, and that has rocketed Israeli towns and cities for nearly a year. We are fighting against the Houthis in Yemen, and the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, that together have launched hundreds of drones and missile attacks against Israel. We are fighting against terrorists in Judea and Samaria, who are trying to murder civilians in the heart of our cities. And we are fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel and which stands behind this 7-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and other Western leaders are now calling for arms embargoes against Israel. Shame on them. Is Iran imposing an arms embargo on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on Hamas and on its other proxies? Of course not. This axis of terror stands together. But countries who supposedly oppose this terror axis call for an arms embargo on Israel. What a disgrace. Israel will win with or without their support. But their shame will continue long after the war is won. For in defending ourselves against this barbarism, Israel is defending civilization against those who seek to impose a dark age of fanaticism on all of us. Rest assured, Israel will fight until the battle is won, for our sake and for the sake of peace and security in the world.
I have a message. I have a message for President Macron. Today, Israel is defending itself on 7 fronts against the enemies of civilization. We're fighting in Gaza against Hamas, those savages who murdered, raped, beheaded, and burned our people on October 7th. We're fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah, the most heavily armed terror organization in the world, which was planning an even greater massacre than October 7th on our northern border, and that has rocketed Israeli towns and cities for nearly a year. We're fighting against the Houthis in Yemen and the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria that together have launched hundreds of drones and missile attacks against Israel. We're fighting against terrorists in Judea and Samaria who are trying to murder civilians in the heart of our cities. And we're fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel, and which stands behind the 7-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them. Is Iran imposing an arms embargo on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on Hamas, and on its other proxies? Of course not. The axis of terror stands together. But countries who supposedly oppose this terror axis call for an arms embargo on Israel. What a disgrace. Well, let me tell you this. Israel will win with or without their support. But their shame will continue long after the war is won. For in defending ourselves against this barbarism, Israel is defending civilizations against those who seek to impose a dark age of fanaticism on all of us. Rest assured, Israel will fight until the battle is won, for our sake and for the sake of the peace and security of the entire world.
Sazua Connect, bringing you the news in a more digital way.